Florida Congressman Byron Donalds is still trying to defend his Jim Crow comments. So he was ticked off when Congressman Hakeem Jeffries ripped him in the Biden campaign, posted a 26-second video of him having this conversation. He was being interviewed by Michelle Tafoya about blacks in the Republican Party. I don't know why in the hell they talking to her, because she ain't black. And so she's absolutely been a hardcore MAGA since leaving the sidelines. And so Byron, so I'm gonna read the tweet he posted. This, y'all gonna love this here, because like Derek Johnson of the NAACP criticized him and so many others. He tweeted this: Joe Biden, Representative Jeffries, Jamie Harrison, Derek NAACP are gaslighting Black America. I was talking about Black families, conservative mindsets, and conservative voting. Receipts are a beautiful thing, and don't clip my words to keep lying. I'm watching. Okay, Byron, you watch Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. So we're gonna play your comments. Go.
I grew up with my mom. My dad and my mom, things didn't work out. As an adult, I look at my father and I say, bro, I don't know what happened, but you my father and I love you.
Wow.
I don't know what happened. I wasn't there.
Wow.
But I'm gonna tell you this, growing up, the one thing I knew I wanted to do, and this is not about my father, this is about what I wanted to do, is I wanted to be a father to myself.
Wow.
And so one of the things that's actually happening in our culture, which you're now starting to see in our politics, is the reinvigoration of Black families with younger Black men and Black women. And that is also helping to breed the revival of a Black middle class in America. You see, during Jim Crow, the Black family was together.
That's right.
During Jim Crow, more Black people were not just conservative, because Black people are always a bit conservative minded, but more Black people voted conservatively. And then HEW, Lyndon Johnson, and then you go down that road, and now we are where we are. What's happened in America the last 10 years, and I say it because it's my contemporaries, it's Wesley's contemporaries, you're starting to see more Black people be married in homes, raising kids. It's when you home with your wife raising your kids, and then you look at the world, you're saying, now wait a minute, time out. This does not look right. How can I get something to my kids? It goes back to the conversation of generational wealth. Not just having a job, generational wealth. I'm looking at my kids. How can my kids be on my shoulders when they take off in life? That's what's happening.
So, So, Byron Donalds, we're seeing a resurgence, a reinvigoration. Okay, I'm gonna get to that in a second. Let me first deal with that. First of all, why are you invoking Jim Crow? Now, if you wanted to say, in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, it was this, you could have said that. You invoked Jim Crow. You, Byron Donalds, gave the impression, you implied, so therefore we inferred that you were saying things were better for the Black family during Jim Crow. That's on your ass. Now, you can't sit here and get pissed off at people because of your choice of words. That's on you. That ain't on us. You didn't have to invoke Jim Crow. And what you then try to imply is that, things for the Black family were stronger during Jim Crow, but then when these liberals came in with these laws that ended Jim Crow, things got worse. That's literally what you were implying. You can't sit here and try to dance around it Because that might work for them other people, but that don't work for me. That's what you did, Byron Donalds. So that's on you. But then Byron Donalds went on to talk about, we're seeing a reinvigoration, marriage and children. Okay. Anthony, go to my iPad. United States Census Bureau. Marriage prevalence for black adults varies by state. District of Columbia had the lowest percentage of married black adults 2015-2019. In this article, written by Chanel Washington, Lakita Walker, it said U.S. marriage rates have been on the decline since the latter half of the 20th century, and both men and women are marrying at a later age, but the decline and delay are even more dramatic among black adults. The median age at first marriage has risen for both men and women. In 1970, the median age at first marriage was 23.2 years for men, 20.8 years for women. 50 years later, those figures climbed to 30.5 years and 20.81 years, respectively. Although there have been drastic changes in marriage patterns for all race and Hispanic origin groups, differences have been especially pronounced for non-Hispanic black adults. 1970, 35.6% of black men and 27.7% of black women were never married. But by 2020, these percentages had jumped to 51.4% for black men and 47.5% for black women. While the percentage of all adults who were never married increased by 7.6 percentage points for men and 7.9 percentage points for women, the corresponding change for black adults was more than double that at 15.8% for men and 19.8% for women. Similarly, the median age at first marriage for black adults increased more dramatically than it did for the overall population. So, Byron Donalds, you just lied. You have no data to back up what you said. What you just said is literally a lie. This is for 2022. Now, unless there was just some dramatic shift in the last 2 years, like we just had this influx of COVID marriages, what you're saying is lying. Now, I am not anti-marriage. My parents this month will be married 57 years. Me 20 plus, my brother, my sister, and her husband. Numbers are the numbers. But what the Byron Donalds don't want to confront, even when he's talking about black folks during Jim Crow, is the economics. Byron Donalds also, by mentioning HEW, Lyndon Baines Johnson, see, this is a familiar narrative from conservatives. Conservatives have offered this whole deal that, the reason the black family has been destroyed is because the government funded black women and said you can make more money if the man is not in the household than if he is. Oh, they forgot that was really for white women. What the conservatives and Byron Donalds never want to talk about is that funding was because they were seeing an increase in women having children and not having resources to be able to provide for them. They have created the narrative that the law was specifically passed for black women. Y'all, President Lyndon Baines Johnson literally launched his war on poverty in Appalachia, in West Virginia. He didn't launch it in the Mississippi Delta. He didn't launch it in the Black Belt in Alabama. He launched that talking to broke, illiterate, can't access health care white folks. They don't want to talk about that. You never want to hear them say, oh, he launched it in Appalachia, which, by the way, is hardcore conservative today. They still illiterate, still broke, still got jacked up health care. Those are facts. What the Byron Donalds of the world don't want to talk about is that black people, since you're referencing Jim Crow, were being denied economic mobility. We're being denied jobs. See, it's real easy to sit here and say, oh my goodness, see, it's these liberal policies. That's why people not getting married, people not having kids. First of all, y'all, can we please stop tripping? Marriage at the outset was a business. It wasn't about no love. It was about property. And if you were a woman, the negotiations took place. Negotiations took place between your daddy and that man's daddy. You were property. It was an economic arrangement. And what we are seeing are folks making economic decisions as it relates to marriage. So Byron Donalds, you can sit here and you can be all mad, but you brought up Jim Crow. You opened that door. And the moment you open the door by mentioning Jim Crow and how black families were together and we had kids and we loved each other, then you can't ignore the other stuff that was happening outside that home during Jim Crow. And that is why you're getting jacked up. And that is why you don't want to be honest about welfare in America, because that wasn't about black folks. We couldn't access it when FDR put that in place. That was about white women. We talk about free lunch programs. Oh, I'm sorry. That wasn't about us. That was because skinny white boys were being malnourished, and the federal government established eating standards in this country because they said it's a national security issue that we can't recruit folks to serve in the military because they're too skinny. Look it up. Byron Donalds, let me be clear. All of the policies that were passed in America through the New Deal, through Truman, through Eisenhower, and even LBJ, that was not for black people. Now, yes, the poverty rate was critical. Clay Kane actually posted about that. Again, this is one of those comments that you're never going to see people like Byron Donalds want to talk about. This is what Clay posted. For Byron Donalds to imply the black family was stronger under Jim Crow is a Jim Crow lie. In 1959, the black poverty rate was 55.1%. Jim Crow was hell, not a golden era, which is why black people, regardless if they were Democrat or Republican, fought to end it. This is the poverty rate right here for black individuals. You see right here, y'all, it was in 1959 a high of 55.1%. Then you begin to see the poverty rates drop, and now it was 17.1% in 2022. Why is that? This was because, one, black folks were being able to access corporate America and other jobs, and then we were actually beyond menial jobs, also because you had government assistance programs that were specifically dealing with the issue of poverty. Byron Donalds, what are you voting for when it comes to poverty? What are you voting for? Are you opposing student loan debt relief? Because guess what, Byron Donalds? One of the reasons why a lot of young folks right now are postponing marriage is because they have massive student loan debt. You take a woman with $150,000 in student loan debt. Oh, Byron, by the way, black people have a much higher rate of student loan debt than white people. So if you got a black woman with $150,000 in student loan debt, you got a brother with $100,000 in student loan debt, you got two people with $250,000 in student loan debt. Oh, I'm sorry, your party hates student loan debt relief. So now we have, of course, a tax on the Fearless Fund, affirmative action being wiped out in colleges. You're saying conservatives want to get rid of all the programs in corporate America that actually help black folks and others in a limited way. But then you want to talk about liberal poverty programs that ran the black man out the family. I'm sorry, aren't you in the same party that got upset when people were getting increased amounts of money during COVID for unemployment? I recall a certain senator, Lindsey Graham, complaining that people were making more money off unemployment insurance than when they were on jobs. And so South Carolina was one of the first states to actually slash unemployment benefits. Oh, guess what? South Carolina also lagged behind everybody else in recovering from COVID because fewer people had money. So I want all y'all to understand, when the people like Byron Donalds loves talking about black folks in the black family and economics, you then need to go to the next level and say, but what is your voting pattern on economics as it relates to individuals and families? Byron Donalds, let me ask you a question. Did you want to get rid of the child tax credit? Did you want to get rid of assistance to folks to aid them out of these programs? Oh, I would love to get his response to that. When folk like Byron Donalds run their mouths, just listen. And when you have to still be explaining 3 days after the fact what you said, that means your ass wasn't clear. So you can't blame everybody else. That's on you. Lauren?
Byron Donalds does not have any expertise in any of this subject matter. He surely cannot speak for over 40 million people in the country. He has no idea what he's talking about. So this is kind of an interesting proposition to be analyzing really anything that he says. And part of the misinfo, disinfo campaign from the Republican Party is to find black people who will say dumb things like this and put it out there so that they can then reference these dumb things. And, so he's teamed up with Tim Scott and Mark Robinson and all the rest to say these things about black America. And, of course, leaving out things like the war on drugs, the school to prison pipeline, the disproportionate incarceration, the sort of effort in this country to be extremely unjust when it comes to black men and really taking them out of communities in one way or the other. And when you give people felonies, you take away their ability to earn a living. I mean, that is a huge issue that no one talks about. Even Democrats rarely talk about that. So while everybody is so, wanting to talk about these issues, I'm not sure, again, you're right. I don't know why you brought up Jim Crow. But I just think he has absolutely no idea what he's talking about. So it kind of is very hard to analyze somebody that has no idea what they're talking about. But it just sort of fits in line with the usual thing of wanting to blame black people for the things that this country historically has put upon them. That's always their go-to. They never refer to any of the history behind any of the subjugation that has gone on for 400 years in this country. That's why they got all mad at the 1619 Project, bringing those facts up. That's why they're trying to change the teaching of history. And that's why misinfo and disinfo on these subjects is on the rise. That's why they're really trying to create a sort of parallel education system to ignore a lot of these facts, because it can never be the United States. It can never be the history of the United States. It has to be the individuals who are, in fact, in a minority, who have been the victim for over 3 centuries of systematic policy, often built into the law. And Byron Donalds is not worth paying that much attention to when it comes to that. I mean, these things are much bigger than him, and he just has no idea what he's talking about.
Reese.
Byron Donalds is full of shit. He's a propagandist. He's a foot soldier of white supremacy and the white nationalist party. For him to sit up there and act like we're all too fucking stupid to understand what he meant by Jim Crow, specifically invoking the term Jim Crow, as being a time, an era where the Black family was together. Shit, in poverty, that ain't something we want to return to. But the tell is in his tweets after that. He says in one of his tweets, his most recent tweets, LBJ's Great Society was destructive to Black families in America. A lie. We need economic policy to help all Americans thrive. Let me tell you something. For him to say that and refer to LBJ's Great Society as destructive in the same week where MAGA judges have used and weaponized the 1866 Civil Rights Act against a Black woman venture capital fund that only provided $20,000 to the 0.2%, making up 0.2% of the funding that Black women receive, to say that we need an economic policy, to say that he's somehow for that in the same week that this decision came out, and he's spoken nothing about that, no outrage, is ridiculous, and it's gaslighting. What he is doing is deliberately sowing disinformation about the effectiveness of the programs that the Republicans want to undo. They want to do the Reconstruction era civil rights movement. They want to undo the civil rights movement of the 1960s because they don't want us to have jack shit. So if they can put a Black man who is nice and, goatee, whatever, with his fucking cigar and his brandy or cognac, whatever he was doing, maybe it was 50 cents cognac, and sit up there and tell people that the policies that actually led to drastically cutting Black poverty down from 55%, 17% is still too high, that led to increased health care. Medicare was a big push for that. Mind you, a lot of these Republicans are the ones still refusing to expand Medicaid as it was under Obamacare. It's just disgusting, despicable behavior. We're not stupid, Byron Donalds. We see right through you. Unfortunately for us, though, he's picked a good time to be a propagandist, him and Tim Scott and all these other Black Republican grifters, because people are beyond low information voters. They are very susceptible to this kind of disinformation. And while they're doing that, the Edward Blooms and the Republicans are marching right along, undoing all of the gains that have been made because of programs like the Great Society. So don't sit up there and patronize us and try to act like you're the victim. And to the mainstream media that continues to platform him under the guise of having a discussion and trying to challenge him, but what you're doing is you're allowing him to perpetuate this disinformation. Y'all need to think twice about this shit too.
Greg?
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. You know, Byron Donalds has benefited from the policies pushed by the very party that he is attacking now. When he was down there at FAM, and I know that all the rattlers out there are relieved that Byron Donalds transferred to Florida State from Florida A&M, so that they don't have to claim his funky ass. But you know, whether it be the check case, that theft case back in 2000, or the marijuana possession case, you know, the kind of things that almost tripped him up as a young man. But the state of Florida, perhaps less conservative than it is now, had diversion programs in place so that he could actually, unlike his master, his lord and master Donald Trump, who's now a convicted felon who can't vote in the state of Florida, but you know, Byron Donalds had a path forward. You know, it's interesting, Roland, you, of course, just walked us beautifully through the history of Lyndon Johnson's War on Poverty, which kicked off, of course, in 1964. That was the same year of a Supreme Court case, McLaughlin versus Florida. They had a law on the books in Florida that said that a white man and a Black woman, or a Black man and a white woman, could not cohabitate if they were not married. And at the time, Florida was one of 17 states that banned interracial marriage. Of course, the Supreme Court said that was a violation of the 14th Amendment. And as you say, Reese, that Civil Rights Act of 1866, which presages the 14th Amendment, that now, because of the colorblindness of the white nationalists on the federal bench, another reason to vote, to prevent putting more of them on, including a couple on the Supreme Court, as you said, Roland, you know, that's how they can weaponize these laws that were passed to do the exact opposite of what the white nationalists are doing with it now. But McLaughlin versus Florida said that, you know, you violated the 14th Amendment. So they struck that law down. 3 short years later, of course, you had Loving versus Virginia, which made interracial marriage constitutional. Said that, you know, bans on interracial marriage in the 17 states were unconstitutional that had them. And I only bring this up as a prelude because 11 years later, Byron Donalds was born. And when he got married to his wife of 23 years, this white woman, Erica Donalds, he wouldn't have been able to sleep with her and live in the same apartment when he transferred to Florida State, which is where they met. Had he been living in the state, had he been alive and a young man at the time, 19-year-old, sniffing around Florida State looking for a girlfriend, at least, Tim, did you get that sand off your knee? What happened to your girlfriend? I saw you propose. Anyway, point is this. He wouldn't be able to sleep with her and live with her because it's been against the law. In fact, his marriage would be against the law. I mean, I don't know why Byron Donalds is talking about the black family, but I'll leave that as a footnote. Finally, he's auditioning for vice president, of course. They're all kissing that booty, you know, little Marco and Byron and as you did so beautifully, Tim Scott and so many others are auditioning. But the New York Times had an article a couple of weeks ago on his wife, this Moms for Liberty board sitting, getting 10% of her company's money from the state of Florida charter school hustle, Erica Donalds. Erica Donalds might be caping to be the Secretary of Education in the second Trump administration. Byron's going to do whatever the hell he can to get his wife perhaps that job, and he can get in the social circles. Hey, you love who you want, but damn, bruh, why you got to bring up Jim Crow? Which, by the way, I have my own opinions about in terms of the black family. Let's be very clear. I don't know. We probably need to talk about the nature of black cultural grounding and how it has changed and hadn't changed over the arc, because I won't necessarily get into that. But Byron, you don't want to go back to the days of Jim Crow, you or Clarence Thomas, because you couldn't have the woman of your dreams. Well, anyway, I'll stop with that.
Somebody's killing poor people, and it's going on.
When COVID happened, poor people were dying at a rate already of 800 people a day. Before COVID, if you went to a funeral every single day, it would take you 600 years to attend all the funerals of the people who will die from the ravages of policy violence, poverty, and low wages in America in just 1 year. It would take you 2 years and 19 days to go to all of the funerals of the people that will die today, and oftentimes silence. Nobody talks about this political genocide, but we are determined today to remember their death and be a resurrection of voting power and voice power like never before.
Economic justice and saving this democracy are deeply connected. We, as a nation, must listen to the demands of the poor, who are pushing and will continue to push political candidates and elected leaders to lift from the bottom so that everybody can rise.
We are the poor, the marginalized, and the underpaid. And we are taking one step forward to say that everybody has a right to live.
Poverty is not the fault of those who are impoverished. It is caused by those who make the policy.
There are over 135 million poor and low-wage, low-income people in this nation.
The biggest block of potential voters by far is low-income, low-wage voters.
I can't afford medicine. Sometimes I have to skip because of the cost.
The farm worker community is tired of the violence imposed upon us by greed, exclusion, and denial of basic human rights.
Those folk that represented by that casket, poor and low-wage workers who are the most moral people in this country because they go to work every day believing, even though going to work is hazardous to their health.
I'm tired of working 70 to 80 hours a week and still not have money for the necessity of bills. I'm tired of getting sick and not being able to go see the doctor. Having to make a choice to pay between rent or the light bill or food or clothes.
You cannot claim to care about families and a culture of life and then do everything in your power to rob people of equal access to resources and to force them to live in poverty.
Leadership of both parties had waged war on poor people and low-wage workers.
And this government has treated people experiencing poverty, including their military families, with disdainful, deliberate, malicious neglect.
So the truth is that my son died from poverty.
We refuse to accept poverty as the fourth leading cause of death.
The fourth leading cause of death in this, the richest country in the world.
We march today for our children and the generations to come.
And we need to do it with the loudest voices possible, the biggest actions possible.
We will voice our demands and register our vote.
When we stand up and when we stand together, things change.
There is the electorate that is, and then there is the electorate that should be.
34 million eligible poor and low-income voters did not vote in 2016. If just 20% of those voters in swing states were mobilized around an agenda, they could change the political outcome of every election. So we're launching the most massive voter mobilization and turnout campaign in history of poor and low-wage voters, allies, and religious leaders.
People are dying, but we know it doesn't have to be this way. And so we are calling on everyone to join us in this Poor People's Campaign, a national call for more revival.
We are here, we will be seen, we will be heard, and our power will be felt. We don't need to be an insurrection. We are a resurrection that will be felt across this country. Are you ready? Ready, ready, ready. We are a resurrection, and we are ready.